Okay.
All right, so welcome everybody. It looks like we got a good number of attendees here. Just to remind you guys, this is a webinar, which means that unlike a normal Zoom meeting, neither Valerie nor I can hear you or see you. You are safe to be in your pajamas watching this. Okay, so that's fine. Now, if you want to interact with Valerie or myself, then you can do so in the chat, or with each other. You can do so in the chat feature. If you want to ask a question, and you can put those in there at any time, you can click on the QA button at the bottom, and you can type your question in. And then when Valerie gets done, she can look at that list of questions and respond to the questions you have. I'm going to ask that you put questions there rather than in the chat, and that just helps us streamline where the questions go. If you have any issues, reach out to me on the chat, and I'll be kind of looking at things. But without further ado, let me introduce here. We've got Valorie Starr this morning at the 10 o'clock session. Valorie is the Director of Library Services here at Weatherford, and does a wonderful job in that role, if I do say so. And she is presenting her paper this morning on Is Cancel Culture the New Censorship?
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction, Dr. Trumpet. And wouldn't you know, technology being what it is, my PowerPoint just decided to die on me right now. Been working on it all morning. It's been good. So let me see if I can get it into hopefully presentation mode. There we go. So that, let's see, change that up. Not really wanting to do what I wanted to do. Let me go ahead and let's see if I can screen share here. And there, hopefully you all can see my presentation. Screen sharing. So if I put it into presentation mode. So it's a little bit difficult in the presentation mode because then I can't really see the chat. So if you're coming through there, so looking for a way that I can see. Greg, since you're still on, would you please put in chat? Are you able to see my PowerPoint? Okay.
Yeah, I can see your PowerPoint. It's the, like you said, it's your presenter mode, so we can see the PowerPoint and the next slide, and then any
Oh, you
notes
can
that
see
you've
that
made.
as well. Okay.
Yeah.
All
So,
right.
but I don't think that's a big issue if you want to leave it like that and keep going.
Okay, I think I'll go ahead and do that. That's fine. So welcome to my presentation. And as Greg said, it's going to be kept on time. So please put your questions in chat. I do have the chat open so I can kind of monitor that. First, I want to start off with, as you can see, definitions of cancel culture. It's a well-known phrase, but you know, what does it really mean? So what I want to do is look at the formal definitions of cancel culture from standard dictionaries, considered valid reference sources, and then also some informal definitions from other sources on the internet. So starting with Merriam-Webster online dictionary, practice or tendency of engaging in mass canceling, and they reference their own definition for canceling. Withdraw one's support for someone or something like a company, and it's public, and especially on social media. So with canceling, you're seeing social media being the new aspect that helps define it as cancel culture. And from Cambridge, a way of behaving in a society or a group, especially on social media, in which it's common to completely reject and stop supporting someone because they have said or done something that offends you. So to me, this definition is written in a bit more informal terms, but also including the social media aspect. Moving on with what I consider to be the informal terms with an Urban Dictionary. A modern internet phenomenon, a person is ejected from influence or fame, and that's how they are defining it. Somebody who has a position of influence or power, caused by a critical mass of people who are quick to judge and slow to question. And this is where I think their definition is interesting. commonly caused by an accusation, whether that accusation has merit or not, and is a direct result of the ignorance of people caused by communication technologies outpacing the growth and available knowledge of a person. So my interpretation of that is people being reactive, not taking time to learn as much, but they react to what is there, what they see on Twitter, what they see on Facebook. So this is one definition which explicitly states how communication technology actually affects the communication at this whole process. A couple other informal definitions. Wikipedia, they use the word ostracism. Someone is thrust out of social or professional circles, whether it be online, social media, or in person. And then another one I found that was interesting from Forbes magazine. They're taking the definition of it to not just celebrities or people who are well known, but generally not powerful people, vulnerable people who suffer devastating harm, losing their jobs, but also as people, especially in educational settings, have become more intimidated. That's another reason I thought that, since I am focused on higher ed, instances of cancel culture. So instead of finding someone who actually used an offensive word, language, or did an action, they expand the definition of cancel-worthy language. So Forbes is saying that, look, it's kind of been expanded, the way people interpret. So with the call-out culture, you know, it predates cancel culture as a concept, and it has its roots in early 2010s with Tumblr fandom, call-out blogs, and with Black Twitter. So once again, starting with call-out culture and then moving on to cancel culture. So that was first officially documented, meaning you'll see it show up in dictionaries in 2017. So Me Too being the first mainstream trend that was considered a cancel culture. And then moving on to a cultural boycott, certain celebrity, brand, company, or concept. So the idea of the boycott, that's been around a long time. You know, people doing an economic boycott to show their displeasure with a stance of a company. And specifically with about here in higher ed, this is kind of an older clip that hopefully I can get to play for you. This is Tammy Bruce, if any of you are familiar with her. She was the head of Planned Parenthood, I believe it was, in Los Angeles back in the 80s into the 90s. And this is a speech that she gave now about 16 and a half years ago at Florida State University. And I want to share it with you. It's about a 4-minute clip. And to me, it's a very good example of the dynamic of cancel culture and how it works. So let me see if we can bring this up. And come on.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I agree with you about labeling. I don't like to label myself. I am a human being. I also am a...
I want to pause it for just a moment just to double check in. Greg, are you able to see this?
No, I just see a blue screen right now.
You just see a blue screen. Okay.
Liberal, progressive, a feminist, and I belong.
Let me see here if I can do the, yeah, it says screen sharing is paused. Let me see if I can do a new share here. Let's see if we can get it to come in this time. If not, we'll just have to.
Yeah, my experience is if you're trying to go from one thing through another, you have to unshare and then share again. There's probably an easier way to do it, but that's been my experience.
Okay. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Group on campus called Students United for Peace and Justice. However, throughout your speech, you made a number of generalizations, labels, and assumptions. You said the gay community, the feminist establishment. You used they over and over and over again. The left of the gay community, you said they have piercings, they go to marching.
Do you have a question? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm getting to that. And you demonized us with ski masks and bats. And if the conservatives are the Jews, then we must be the Nazis. So how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
I'm Sarah.
All right, Sarah. First of all, were you did you have the ski mask on with the bat that vandal? Okay, then I wasn't talking about you, was I?
But you
Sarah,
talked
Sarah,
about
hold
it,
on.
it was under the context of
Hold
being
on.
from the left.
Well, this is,
Being from the left.
hold on,
I
Sarah,
consider
hold on,
myself
and
from.
this is, all right, I want you to sit down, I'm gonna answer your question. Here is my concerns. Now listen, this is when we talked about structure. There's structure and there is an issue. There's an issue of a discussion which we're gonna have. Now there's, for me, excuse me? Come on now, oh, come on now. Here's the other issue about discussions. We're gonna have discussions. There are gonna be people in the world with whom you disagree. And then there is the intellectual laziness of screaming, as the thought police would, racist, sexist, homophobe, or now fascist, in order to make a point. Can we do something here? Okay. All right, I can tell you until I'm blue in the face about what this is. And here you have your perfect example. Now, are you trying to frighten me into being quiet, or what are you trying to do? I want to be able to answer a question, which I wasn't having a chance to. Your point of calling me a fascist is what? What do you guys want to achieve by calling me a fascist? You want to send a message to the rest of this group that it's dangerous to disagree with you? Did I point to you and knowing your name, and I addressed this in what I spoke about, that if you are not engaging in this and dealing with issues of narcissism, then I'm not speaking about you. And this is the other issue about groupthink. As long as you associate with a group, we talk about a lack of individualism, she immediately associates herself with the entire group. It may not involve you, it probably does not. But your association with these groups means that you cannot even separate yourself within the framework of what I say. Don't you see? So that's, when I talk about examples of what belonging to a group does, it keeps you from being able to separate yourself from that framework. And then you immediately think, as the left and its leadership wants you to do, it wants you to think that all attacks are against you, all statements are about you, and the narcissism feeds that. It goes hand in hand. That if everything that happens is because of you, everything that is said is about you. And you see it happening right here. You can talk about it, you see it manifesting. In addition to the name calling, part of the message is not to me. I'll leave this campus. The message is to the rest of you, which I'm sure have faced this in one way or another, that it is dangerous and you'll be shouted at, you'll be called names, and you'll be punished if you say things that they don't like. And this is what I've been talking about. So thank you for the example.
So that was the clip I wanted to share. I'm going to stop sharing that now so I can go back to sharing the PowerPoint presentation with that. So I can do that. And so my goal in sharing that with you is to show the dynamic of how the students are there and name calling and shouting down, and her responding back to that saying, well, what is the point of what you're trying to do? You're trying to silence me just now. What's the message you're sending to everybody else who is here? So to me, that was kind of an earlier example of kind of cancel culture and the dynamic of how the communication process happens. So to me, looking at it, cancel culture, and it's a new term, and it takes on the social media aspect. And it's really kind of a new name for retaliation. And so usually an action done in order to silence or to censor an individual. And now I want to focus to keep the presentation focused and to keep on time, about focusing on higher ed and libraries, and not address cancel culture in pop culture or national politics or other areas. Now, obviously their national politics is going to be a part of some of these incidents, but the focus is, I really want to focus on how it's playing out in higher education and in libraries. To look at how social media and its influence in the process, and that the casualties of cancel culture, they're from across the spectrum. You know, I really don't want to focus on, is it liberal, is it conservative, but that, you know, it's really a broad phenomenon that's happening out there. So to start off with, I'm going to start off with 2 incidents that are nationwide outside of Texas, and then 3 instances here within Texas that could be considered cancel culture. And then I want to talk about 2 instances that are library related. So nationwide, almost a year ago, up in Kansas at Wichita State University, they had invited in February of 2020 Ivanka Trump to give a congratulatory message during their commencement. And this is to clarify, it wasn't even commencement for the whole University of Wichita State. It was for a smaller technical campus that they had. And then they decided to withdraw their invitation to her. Actually, they didn't explicitly withdraw. They put her speech down as one of a selection of, I believe, 30 pre-recorded speeches that students could watch. But they did make a public statement of it there at Wichita State that they felt that it was insensitive. The timing of the announcement was insensitive, and that they are, where they say down there, I've heard you and we are responding. I believe that's in response to the students, that students were not impressed with them having Ivanka Trump as their main speaker. So now the social media aspect playing in with Ivanka Trump, who tweets about that and calling it cancel culture. So she felt that she was cancel cultured with this of being demoted. She did go ahead and record her address. So following on the heels of that, in June of last year, the president and Golden at Wichita State, he did take some heat for that. And there was some concern from the big donors who are up there. And if any of you are familiar with Koch Industries and the Koch brothers, that they are based in Wichita, Kansas, and they do give a fair amount of money to Wichita State. They've been a supporter up there for quite a while. And as most of you know, very conservative views that they have. And so the response back there you have from Stephen Clark, who is a regent, Kansas Board of Regents. And he was, as you can read there, he claims Golden chose one side. You can't choose a side when you're a public taxpayer supported institution. And then you've got some other response back, such as from students there on the bottom left. Can't believe the witness that the Kansas Regents silenced their student body president. So people discussing their views out here on Twitter, and very quick discussion and responses to things. And everything seemed like there was an emergency meeting in June, and Golden still remained in his position. Then it came to September of last year that he resigned his position. So now officially it said that the regents provided no explanation for his departure. His resignation followed a special Board of Regents meeting, and the board did not provide news outlets with remote access. That is standard procedure. Dealing with personnel issues, that is a standard procedure for any organization that's not publicly broadcast. Rolf, I'm not sure who that is. He is on the Board of Regents, I assume, said that Golden's resignation was not related to the controversy. That is their official statement. And also, I do want to point out here, I know that my formatting of this presentation is a little different, where you're seeing all of these little links in here. And I'll address that a little bit later on at the end of my presentation about why I've kind of put this information here, which is not really standard for how you would do references for a presentation. The second incident I'd like to talk about nationwide is in Oregon. So back in August of 2020, there was a professor at Portland State University who in a class discussed math as racist. I do not believe this was a mathematics instructor. This was somebody in a different department, I believe in a sociology department. So this instructor brings up math as racist, and the article is on CNN. The article on CNN is, you can see, it's from 2016. It's not a terribly recent article. Now, this is where it's a little interesting and why I have allegedly here, because I couldn't find any of the actual tweets or pictures, and it was difficult to come down to that. As you can see here, somebody writes that what happened is that a student took pictures of some slides in this class. Now it says it's a teacher education course. The student disliked them and put them up on their own Twitter site. Now, there are two faculty members at Portland State University, Gilly and Bogosian. They retweeted those slides. Now, you cannot find those slides on either of their Twitter feeds anymore. And it says apparently some of the first names of students were on the slides. The dean asked these two faculty to take them down, so they did, so you can't find them. However, you already had some other faculty members on Twitter who were caught those slides being up, and they considered this to be bullying. So Dr. Ruth, faculty member there, another faculty member at Portland State, then on in October, files a grievance about her colleagues posting this on Twitter. So Twitter being outside of, work, so it's not their official work communication, but it's feeding into how the dynamic of the workplace. And the faculty member Ruth writes an article. It was published on Chronicle of Higher Education, and so she writes about her point of view of this, and what her perspective is. She is, as you can see, elected leadership of her faculty union chapter, the PSU AAUP, and that she says that her colleagues, with her point of view, that they feel like they cannot say what they think in departmental meetings, so that this type of, what she says, anti-woke, the anti-woke mob is intimidating her and her colleagues. And so she felt very strongly, and also went to their faculty senate, and the faculty senate acted and passed a resolution. Professor Gilly, one of the faculty members who's named, he responds on Twitter, and this is still up there on his Twitter feed. And so saying that union representative, now he does not explicitly name Ruth, now whereas Ruth explicitly names Gilly and Bogosian. So a little bit difference on how you'll see different people kind of either explicitly name people or not, as they're, kind of going through one of the cancel culture incidents. And so here's what he tweets about on his personal feed, And then moving on, some months later, that was back in the fall, here in March, the Portland State University AAUP chapter issues its own statement. It's indirectly chiding Gilly and Bogosian. Now, they do not name those two explicitly, but they do, and this is still up there on their blog, on their site. And so they filed a Division A grievance on behalf of members against Gilly and Bogosian for bullying and harassment under the guise of academic freedom. So they are saying that what is posted on Twitter is, it's offensive and it's not part of academic freedom. They shouldn't do it. And noticing, I've made a comment on here that there's so many emotional and borderline name calling public posts and in the article of Chronicle of Higher Education. So it's interesting to read this in the tone that kind of comes through in some of these incidents, and how the colleagues actually talk to each other, and what they print, and mostly what they put out on the internet, on their public forums. So those were two incidents from the nation, and now I'd like to talk about 3 here in Texas. And that here in November of 2019 at University of North Texas, there's math faculty member, Nathan Heers, and he was in his lounge, the faculty lounge there. There was a stack of flyers about microaggressions. And so this is pulled, that you can't find this flyer anymore, at least I couldn't find it. So some of the content listed on the flyer about microaggressions was that America is a land of opportunity, and being forced to choose male or female when completing basic forms, those people considered it a form of microaggression. And faculty member Hears disagreed with this. So in response, he wrote a message on the chalkboard in the faculty lounge, and it read, "Please don't leave garbage lying around," with an arrow pointing to the stack of flyers. So that was his opinion about that. And he was called into the department chair. So the department chair pressed him for an apology, and he refused. So he went to meet on November 26th, so pretty quickly afterwards. Also asked him if he'd attend some diversity training, and Hears declined to apologize or attend the additional training. And you can also find Hears' reason for not apologizing. He felt that microaggressions are really kind of adding to victimization, I believe. I'm sorry, I don't have a direct quote about that, but he disagrees with how microaggressions are interpreted. And then moving on with December 2nd. So within a couple of weeks, he's fired. He's noticed of non-renewal of his contract. And his department chair explains that Hears was being punished because his opinion on microaggressions conflicted with the department chair's opinion, and that his message on the chalkboard was upsetting and could be perceived as threatening, and that he did not express honest regret about his actions. So this is documented there by Hears. And for leaving an anonymous, Schmidt said he was fired for leaving an anonymous upsetting message in the lounge. What is also pointed out here by the legal defense for Hears, he has filed a lawsuit, is that the flyers themselves were left anonymously. So I guess there is not a group on the flyers named on the flyers as being responsible for the content. So that was also anonymous. And Schmidt made no attempt to identify or let alone discipline whoever left the flyers in the lounge. So that's considered a bit of, I guess, unfairness there. And he did not take Hears' comments as teasing or humorous in which Hears says he expressed them. So now April 16th of 2020, so this being just over a year ago, that Hears files a lawsuit, and that's been done by the Alliance for Defending Freedom. It's filed in Sherman, Texas. And this suit itself, I actually did find that the actual legal document, the filing, it says this is a civil rights action that raises federal questions under the United States Constitution, particularly First, 14th Amendment and Civil Rights Act. So that's how they are filing it, that it's a violation of Hears, partly his First Amendment rights to free speech. They also, it's also pointed out that the university's misconduct policy guarantees a process for disciplinary action, and that the department chair Schmidt nor anyone else at the university followed those steps in terminating Hears. So bit of a kind of a two-pronged response to that in this lawsuit. And I will say, even now, more than a year out, I was not able to find anything more current about the status of this to know where this is in the process with that. Another one with Texas Higher Ed. This one's a very recent one. So last fall during the VP debates, there's a faculty member at Collin College. Her name is Dr. Laura Burnett. You can see her name there on her Twitter feed. And her Twitter feed, this is all still up on her feed. And she was watching the vice presidential debates. And you can read her comments there, about, obviously she had a very strong dislike for Mike Pence. And continuing on, I guess she's also has a thread on Trump as his death cult, as she defines it. And then also retweeting some other comments about Mike Pence during the debate there on October 7th. And very shortly after she put those out, another organization called campusreform.org saw the tweets. And so they contacted the administration at Collin College to, they're kind of a watchdog and watching things. And so that's what they did. And the administration at Collin College then sent an email to all faculty, and this statement is posted. It was posted on their college website, and they don't explicitly name Dr. Laura Burnett, but they do say they're aware of hateful, vile, and ill-considered Twitter posts by one of its faculty members. Now, whether or not these Twitter posts were done on staff, paid time, that looks like it was done on her own private Twitter feed, kind of like the other instance with that faculty member in Oregon, that his posts were on his personal Twitter feed. And so while it's unfortunate, in this instance of unfortunate speech may be protected, comments such as these do not best serve our community. So hate and profanity are never welcome. So this was the college's response, a public response. Move back. That was around October 7th, October 15th. Dr. Laura Burnett writes an article, and it is published on the Chronicle of Higher Education website, and her stating her experience through this. And that's the statement of her article: right-wing trolls attacked me, my administration buckled, and how she felt that they buckled under the pressure they received from campusreform.org. So now in February of 2021, Dr. Burnett publicly questioned the motives of the college president, and then she received a notice of a non-renewal of her contract, so that her contract, which is set to expire in May, will be set to expire. She will not be renewed. So she claims that she is fired for mean tweets. She denies that this is cancel culture. You can see that there where it's posted. So to her, there is no such thing as cancel culture. It's retaliation for free speech. So I do not know if she is filing a lawsuit or not, but here's, even though the aspects of this, where it's talking about Twitter and social media and being very a public discussion, she claims it's not cancel culture, even though those aspects really make it meet the definition of cancel culture. So the last one, just to quickly talk about here for Texas, is the Sul Ross statue at Texas A&M, and that in June of last year, the statue was defaced on the College Station campus. And there's been a lot of talk about should the statue be taken down based on the personal history of Sul Ross. And in August of 2020, the legislature is, because there's something about the status of the monument, this has to go through the state legislature. It's not just the college administration that can make decisions about what to do with it. So the legislature mandates the statue must have a prominent location. And college administration took that under advisement, looked it over, and in January of this year, they refused to remove the statue. So that's just a picture I found from last year. I don't know what is the status of it as far as it, has it been restored or anything. But that was how that incident kind of played out, with, students asking for something to be removed, and the administration and the legislature and their interpretation. So moving on with kind of cancel culture in libraries, and I, as a librarian, yes, I do have an interest in this. And this is very recent. Some of you may have come across this on any kind of social media, that here in March, that on Dr. Seuss's birthday, the corporation that publishes Dr. Seuss has decided to discontinue publishing 6 titles, and they're listed there. I think that I saw it on Mulberry Street if I ran the zoo. And these books portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong. And what has been interpreted in those books is that you can see some of the cartoons have been criticized, which depict African Americans as monkeys, as well as expressing a number of anti-Japanese sentiments. And it's actually now very difficult. I was earlier able to find some of the other pictures from those books that they're now no longer on the internet. And as well as I could find this one. So just to put that in, that's from one of the books that they've now decided to cease publication of them. And with libraries have had a varied response to this. So you've got the New York Public Library, Denver. They are going to keep them. They're going to keep them on the shelves. You've got the Chicago Public Library. They decided to remove them. And in Loudoun County, Virginia, that they decided to discontinue celebrating Dr. Seuss during Read Across America Day. So, and that was part of this, I guess March 2nd is also Theodore Geisel's birthday. And so that's been a big part. What is interesting with the ALA, they still maintain an annual award in the name of Geisel. So the purpose of the award recognizes the authors and illustrators of a book for beginning readers, demonstrate creativity and imagination to engage children in reading. So the ALA is still showing support for Dr. Seuss and for his work and what that encouraged children to read. And another article said, many major public libraries follow the ALA's freedom to read principles. And it's guidance that libraries should provide a wide range of views, including expressions that are unorthodox, unpopular, or considered dangerous by the majority. So that's been the ALA's stance on that. Actually, the fact that they've not removed the Dr. Seuss Award, to me, is tacitly saying that they still support that. But they're not going to tell libraries what to do in terms of, do they keep the books on the shelves, do they not? So they don't advocate in that way. So that's how these bigger library systems have made their own decisions about it. So that's one first incident for libraries. For cancel culture in libraries, another one. So about a year ago, in June of 2020, the American Library Association decided to officially promote the Black Lives Matter movement. And so this was an icon that they put up, and a lot of libraries have joined with that, and to ALA to show their stance against racism. And they have stated that libraries do need to have more of a social justice point of view and to be aware of that. So this is their official stance. And about, shortly after that came out, so that would be last summer, a librarian in Arizona who works for the city of Flagstaff, he objected to ALA's platform on this. And I have, a couple of quotes from him here. It was an email that he wrote back. It was very lengthy, to his organization within ALA, the Association of Bookmobile and Outreach Services, which he's been a part. And so he was very vociferous, saying that he disagreed with ALA making a public stance to promote Black Lives Matter. And so his stance is libraries should provide aid and information to all who seek it and not function as a politicized, prejudicial advocacy factory. It's a statement for them. He also listed a number of other resources that are not pro Black Lives Matter as a counterpoint. He also points out here, with the ALA promoting diversity and inclusion, that 80% of American librarians are women. So why is no interest in gender diversity in this? And as you can read the rest of his comments there. And he's right about that statistic, that women are the majority in library world. I also want to point out that he has been a bookmobile driver on the Navajo reservation, and he obtained 3 grants for projects on the reservation. And that is something else he points out. He says, look, I have basically walked the talk, and I'm one who has promoted library services to underserved populations. So I do feel I have a right to speak on that. So that's his background and his professional life as a librarian. Well, on this listserv, 2 other librarians obviously noticed it, and they were not pleased with it. They very much disagreed with with Ron Kelly. And this is, as you can see, information received via a Freedom of Information Act. So that means, I guess, that some of that from a listserv was actually removed, because if you had to have a FOIA request to find it, that's, to me, is a little interesting. So that there were 2 individuals who avoided public debate. Now, it's according to this source. There's only one source where I could find this. And they contacted the Flagstaff Public Library complaining about Ron Kelly. And you can see one is the president of the ABOS, the Association for Bookmobile and Outreach Services, as part of the ALA, and another librarian there who is in Indiana. So neither of these people work with Ron Kelly. I don't believe either of them are in Arizona, from Arizona. So they are just other library professionals in the field who contacted the Flagstaff Public Library, Kelly's employer, that they were very displeased with Ron Kelly's stance. And then 2 days later, the city of Flagstaff fires Ron Kelly. So, which is very, very quick that they did that. And that in a letter 2 days after he argued with them, and you can see some of the language here, heresy, notice to inform you of our recommendation that you be dismissed from your position effective immediately. And so the notice did name the listserv post specifically as the reason, and said his firing was the content of his speech. And for me as a librarian, I think it's very sad, and it's concerning, because here's somebody who actually, through his own job, promoted library services to populations that you would think that would be pleasing to the ALA. Also, as a librarian, it is not contingent that you be a member of ALA to be a librarian or hold a professional librarian position. So whether you agree or disagree with ALA as the national organization, it is not requisite that a librarian be a member in order to have a job as a professional. So the fact that the city of Flagstaff felt that Kelly's disagreement warranted his dismissal from his position, despite how he actually did his job, to me, that's very concerning. So looking at, with being canceled, this is something from the Forbes article that I had, where Forbes is the one stating that cancel culture now it's really focusing on smaller individuals, getting away from big name celebrities, that it's really, it's expanding. And for smaller people, you can speak a foreign word that's misunderstood, attend a rally. There were some faculty members who attended a Blue Lives Matter rally and students disliked it. Change your opinion after 20 years. Or, did you wear a costume or a makeup, and pictures of that from the past show up, and how is that interpreted now and being put out on social media? So with the phenomenon coming up, and, with social media and how things can be widely disseminated. And part of the reflection I had through doing this is that researching this topic has its own risks of bias vis-a-vis the sources that report it, that obviously with the politics that drive some of these instances, that you can only find things on certain websites that are promoting particular points of view, with like FIRE versus campus reform, FIRE being the more in support of liberal, although I have seen them take both sides, campus reform tending to be more conservative, New York Times versus New York Post, the AAUP versus the National Association of Scholars. I also found in doing this that verification of data is difficult, because the evidence, as I mentioned in previously, it is ephemeral, and it's subject to reinterpretation, editing, and deletion. So to actually find the posts that say what you're trying to say, or verify what somebody else has said, can be very difficult. And this is where, that part of that definition from the Urban Dictionary, to me, is very telling, about it's very easy to react instead of review. And to just pull out that quote there, it is a direct result of the ignorance of people caused by communication technologies outpacing the growth and available knowledge of a person. And from what I read, even from, other higher ed professionals and their interpretation of events and how they write, there's a lot of reaction going on. And it's interesting to read, but also to see how cancel culture with the social media really has changed the dynamic. Now it's still an old dynamic of retaliation and censorship, but it functions in a new way with the the technology that's here, that we can all stop. We can all communicate a lot quicker. Sorry about that. I'm trying to find the chat here to see if there are any.
So Valorie, it's in the Q&A. If you click down on the bottom panel, you should see a Q&A button.
Mm-hmm.
And looks like we got one question there.
Okay. Let's see, scope of your administration. And I don't know if I'll have time to get this. I know we got to finish up in here in about 3 minutes. Scope of administration that protects you from possible retaliation of having your own opinions about topics. Cannot say or stand up for anything anymore. How you can still protect your views. How you can still protect your views. Partly is how you express your views. I'll be honest, this was actually kind of a depressing presentation to put together because of all of the very inflammatory name-calling language that is out there about how people treat each other and how that comes through on social media. Even for professional colleagues, and that's why I like that Tammy Bruce, she says clip about how can we have discussions? You're going to talk with people with whom you disagree, and the way you do that. And so some people who come out and it's name calling. And to me, that doesn't give any credence to somebody's point of view for that. How are you able to still be a part of society today in a social setting and not be canceled? That's a difficult one, because it's really difficult to tell kind of what's going to be pulled up for some people. Do you have insight on how we are to preserve our history and still move forward as a society, including our libraries? I would like to see, as far as libraries, and somebody else putting in here, discuss censorship and the effect on libraries. I am very dismayed about libraries removing the Dr. Seuss. If you want to remove it from, say, actual, children's circulation, that's fine. Have them back where at least people can still get to that information. Put it in a special checkout where people have to ask for it. So I'm concerned about that. I agree with the libraries. We need to preserve what's there for counterpoint and for reference as going forward. So I don't like the canceling, and that's why I said, deletion of things on social media makes it difficult to actually verify. I want to thank everybody for sitting through my presentation today. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I hope it wasn't too distracting.
So we've got a couple more minutes here, Valorie. I got a quick question for you. Are you still there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay. With these self-censors, right? So like the Dr. Seuss estate, self-censoring their work, right? Of course, they do it as a result of cultural pressures, right? So my question is that enough to be considered an aspect of cancel culture censorship? And if it is, it doesn't feel like that kind of thing's really all that new, is it? I mean, because we've, part of our history of the country is, this boycott, make your voice be known, kind of put cultural pressure on institutions to affect change. So where does that skirt the line on cancel culture, and what is new about it? Like, what is new about the Dr. Seuss event that's different from what we've seen in the past with these kinds of things?
Well, with partly with the cancel culture, the communication, the speed of the technology, that goes around so that people can just, and I'll admit, I've been guilty of it a few times myself, like on Facebook, to glance at something and the way it's written can really kind of pique your emotion. And you pass that on, you repost, you retweet, and that you don't really look at what is it saying. And so to me, that is part of it. And yeah, a lot of this, it's the new censorship, it's the new retaliation. Just like you said, it's been around a while. And as far as with going after Dr. Seuss right now, people have known for years, he also wrote a number of very racist things back during the wars, during World War II. That's been out there. He has one book that's frankly of naked people. I mean, that stuff's been there. And but that kind of moves into a different aspect of, do you cancel a whole person for a few things, or do you hang on, do you all say, well, we accept that was part of what they did, we don't like all of what they did, and kind of maybe a more holistic view of somebody's work, body of work. Can you like the work somebody does but dislike the individual who has that work, who does it?
Right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I think you're right about what you said about preserving our, how can we be individuals in this culture? How can we keep from being canceled ourselves? And connecting to the academic freedom side, it certainly seems that there's no guarantees, right? And this is on both sides of the political spectrum. There's no guarantees that what you say isn't going to offend somebody who has a particular voice or the particular ear of a group of people, and that this kind of thing can happen to you. It seems to me that within the realm of academics and the realm of education, that what we need to be is exercise some intellectual virtues, and one of those is intellectual courage and tenacity. So if you know what you're saying is right and needs to be said and can be put out there, then there may be some consequences to that, but that's kind of that's part of the job, as it were.
That's what the academy is supposed to be about. It's
Right.
supposed to be about, that's why tenure was created,
Right.
was so that there would be job security for those people who were promoting and doing research in areas that were not popular, that were not with the current political trend of things. That was the whole purpose of it. And that is, eroded for better, for worse. But yeah, that was the whole point of the academy, is to be able to say, yes, I do have this different idea, and here's my verification, my justification for it, and have that be considered fairly, honestly.
Right. Well, thank you. We're going to have to end it on there, and we will thank our attendees for coming, and Valorie, thank you for presenting. We can't give a real clap, but I'm imagining everybody clapping for you right now. I know that they are. So thank you again very much, Valorie. And
thank you for moderating. I appreciate your input. And like I said, sorry for the technical issues.
Oh, no.
I was here at my work and I thought everything would be fine.
It worked out perfect. So, all right, y'all have a good rest of your day. There's a lot more sessions to go to. So I'm going to go to my next one that I'm moderating now, and I'll see you guys later.
Okay, great. Thank you.